Okay, so I'm here with Elsa Mota. The date is March 10th, 2021, and we're here to talk about her time at UF and her experience with MFOS. So, to start off, can you explain to me like how you decided to go to UF as an undergrad and kind of your college
Yeah,
process?
sure. So my process was interesting. So I'm a first generation college student, first generation American. I was the first in my family to be born in the US. My parents came from the Dominican Republic in 1990 and had my brother in 89 and then me in 91. So there definitely wasn't like a precedent of like going to college in the US or really knowing what that was. So I don't think I really had plans to go to college. Like I didn't know what happened after high school. My cousins who had come to the United States after being a little older just like had jobs or had kids. And so like that's as far as I saw. I think I used to watch Gossip Girl in high school, so I knew that like Blair wanted to go to Yale and Serena wanted to go to Brown, but like I think in my conception of college, like the only college that I really knew about was community college. So I'm like, well, that's where I would go because like I live here and in my culture, people don't go away for college. Like you stay home and you live at home until like you're married. So I started hearing other people talk about it, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna do that. And I also like just did not have a conception of that you could apply like outside of the state. So I'd also heard that like, oh, there's Florida Bright Futures, and I just had never really left Miami up until that point, like only to go to the Dominican Republic with my parents, but I hadn't really gone anywhere else. So I was like, cool, like I'll apply in the state. So I looked at all the schools in Florida and I was like, okay, I'll apply to UCF, FSU, UF. And then like I think actually that happened after I got an invitation from UF. It was like an Hispanic scholars weekend or something. And I was like, hey, here's this thing. Everything is paid for. Like I really think that we should go. My parents who were together at the moment, they were like, okay, anytime I said like, hey, I think I want to do like the science fair or whatever, they'd be like, okay, because they didn't really have context. And I guess if it wasn't me asking to like do something bad, they were like, sure, if you can do it and we can afford it, like let's try. And because this was free, it meant that we could afford it. So we drove all the way to Gainesville, which was the furthest I had ever been north, like those past Orlando.
Yeah.
And I remember eating at Gator Dining and staying in like I think it was Broward Hall. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And like all the people who they invited were like people who were really smart in my class, like all the kids who were like an AP and honors. And I was like, well, I'm here too. So cool. So that's why UF became my first choice because it was that's why I really believe in like outreach and admission stuff because like for a lot of students like me, we don't know until we know, right? Other people were like, of course I'm applying to UF, like it's the flagship. And I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
So I went, I liked it, and I was like, well, that's my first choice. I'm going to apply, and if I get in, that's where I'm going to go. And I ended up getting into like all the Florida schools. So I got into UF, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go there. At this point, I had heard more, and my now best friend, we had just started becoming good friends senior year of high school, was like, that's where I want to go. And she got in, and I got in, and I was like, well, let's be roommates.
Yeah.
And I remember the weekend I found out I got in, I was in mathletes, like it was Mu Alpha
Yes.
Theta. I don't like when women say they're not good at math, but I can tell you from experience that I have not, it is not my strongest subject of all the subjects. And I was only in there to get extra credit so that I could like at least get a B in the class. It was AP calculus, was incredibly difficult, but I just wanted to like try. So I was in my Mu Alpha Theta competition when I found out. So yeah. And then later on, I found out about like the scholarship. I don't even think you had to do anything. They just let me know. And I was like, it's lit. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go here. And apparently, because I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. Like, I did my part in applying. But my parents, when I got serious, my parents kind of sat me down. They're like, hey, we can't pay for this. So I don't know what you're going to do. And I was like, don't worry about it. Like, I'll figure it out, not having any actual plan in mind. Because I also didn't know about all the scholarships you could apply for. So FOS just kind of fell in my lap and was perfect.
Yeah. So, so you like had bright futures on top of MFOS?
Yeah. So I think what they did was just give me the remainder. Like they would subtract by futures and anything else that you had. And then the whole, are you FOS as well?
No, I'm a part of the oral history program, so I'm just like
Got
learning
it.
about it.
Yeah. So FOS covers, and before it was FOS with no M, but I'll add the MFOS. it covers your entire cost of attendance. So like I think at that point the estimate was like 18,000 or something like that. And so that's housing, you know, a meal plan if you want one, your books, your tuition, all that.
Yeah. So like how like going into UF, which I'm sure is like scary enough. Like I'm born and raised in Gainesville and like it was scary enough going in. How did like MFOS kind of like introduce you to the whole college experience, but also, you know, the other side of the college experience is like you're on your own now, like you're living by
Mhm.
yourself. How did it prepare you for that?
Yeah, so interestingly, I had already been on my own. Notice that I said like when my parents were together.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I remember I applied to UF, I think it was October of my senior year.
Hmm.
Was when it was due. I was freaking out because there was like midterms and all that stuff. And November of my senior year, my parents split up in like a very dramatic way because my dad was like pretty abusive. And this is in my FOS interviews for other things, so like I
Yeah.
don't really mind.
Okay.
Was pretty abusive, and so my mom literally just had to like flee to like another state. Like I got home from school one day and like my mom wasn't there, and I
Yeah.
was like, wait, what's happening? Because she did a pretty good job of making sure that like the kids didn't know what was going on. The kids, I was 17 and my brother was like 19. So like probably a month after that, we left the place that we were living that was right next to my high school and moved like probably like an hour away. But I wanted to stay in this school
Yeah.
because all my classes were there, like all my extracurriculars. Like I don't want to mess up my chances of getting into college, blah blah blah. And then because said abusive dad, I left in like March. I was like, this is too far from my school and I don't want to deal with you. So I moved out. So I had already lived by myself
Oh,
in probably worse conditions in college because it was like I had a job, I was paying rent, like I was like had my car insurance, like I was paying all of my own expenses on my little like ice cream parlor, like Cold Stone salary. Um, so when I got to college, it actually was. I know for a lot of people, it's like, oh my gosh, now I got to figure out how to cook.
yeah.
I still didn't know how to cook, not really. Um, but I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing because I have a meal plan. So there's food. I don't have to worry about what I'm going to eat. I actually don't have to have a job if I don't want to. I did get a job like almost immediately, but I was like, I don't have to have one. Um, like I have like security, you know, like I have roommates. It allowed me to be more of like a kid than I think it usually is for people. I usually think it's flipped. But to the rest of your question, there's still the matter of like you're in a new academic environment, a new cultural environment. Miami is very different from Gainesville if you've ever visited. And so first gen, you don't really know things. And I know that when I first got there, there was this program called OAS from the Office of Academic Affairs. It was
Mhm.
called Oasis and then OAS. They've changed the name, so I'm sure
Yeah.
it's changed again. But it was kind of like a intro to college sort of thing. And I also was in first year Florida, which is mandatory for FOS students. And Dr. Pendleton was actually my instructor.
Mm.
So that was cool that I got to be so close to the director of the program. And we've like stayed in touch and close ever since. I think she kind of like saw in me that I was going to be a person who's going to really take advantage of the program.
Yeah.
It helped me in those ways. And it also helped that I truly really had like a I'm going to do this kind of attitude, like I'm going to win sort of thing when
Yeah.
entering that. Cause I'd already kind of been through so much that I was like, I'm here, like life doesn't get any harder than it just was. So like, I can do this.
That's absolutely true. Like my best friend had to end up like living alone at the latter part of her senior year, and so like I understand like it's a tough situation to be in, and like everything that like the UF system has given her, like because of like bright futures and also like some external scholarships, she's like, I don't have to work if I don't want to, and like everything you
Right.
just said. So
It makes a huge, huge difference. I feel horrible for her. I still have friends now who like were late turning in the paper for FOS but qualified, and their experience was really different than mine. And I'm just like, that really sucks that due to a technicality you didn't get to have the experience I had.
yeah. So like going on into like your latter part of, you know, your undergrad experience, why and like when did you decide to pursue a graduate degree and especially in law?
And I had to say this in my law school interviews, and I was like, as corny as it sounds, I always wanted to be a lawyer. Like that
Yeah.
is just always the career that I envisioned. Um, my parents work in like healthcare, and they really like that. I am not interested in it. Like I don't want to deal with people's like fluids, and it's just like not to me. Whereas law is also like an incredibly difficult and stressful career, but it's just also fun. Like
Yeah.
And and I'm sure that whoever does whatever, that's how they feel about their field.
Yeah.
But I just always felt that like there are so many, and of course, sorry.
No, you're totally okay.
Um, of course, my views have become more nuanced. Like I definitely don't believe that I'm going to like change the world of the law, because like the law itself is corrupt, and like that's the problem.
Yeah.
But if I don't know it, then there's nothing I can do to address it as of now. This was before like community organizing was big, before like policy and advocacy was big, and now I do both together.
Yeah.
But before I was like, this is how I'm going to change things. Like this is what I'm going to do. So I knew I needed to go to law school, and I was in pre-legal honor society like the whole time. And I think my senior year I was president. I was very, very involved in that. And so I was like, all right, what do I have to do to be a successful candidate? Like, here's the LSAT, like, here's how, like, my resume. I was like, great, I'm going to do as much as I can that I like. I worked at Student Legal Services from my first year all the way until after I graduated. Actually, like I came back in the summer. So that was some good experience, and I got some good mentorship and like letters from that. If anything, the big decision was to not go to law school right away. Like I decided to take 3 years before I applied, just to like make sure that I wasn't on some kind of like narrow-minded grind towards that, and that like I was going in there for like the right reasons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So did MFOS help you kind of like curate because like obviously you did a lot in college just by like what you're saying right now. Like, did MFOS help you with like applying to grad schools?
No, because I took time off. I don't know if when you
Well, I guess
stay they do. Yeah, I know sometimes there were like pre-law like panels. There was one person who was older than me. Her name was Daime Sanchez, and she ended up getting into Harvard. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like we can go to like, because remember for undergrad, I had no idea that I could apply to a place like Harvard. But for a law school, I knew that I could apply anywhere. You might not get in everywhere, but I can apply everywhere. Hold on, let me just check if someone
No, you're
is
totally
on call to pick up. It's from the prison. So, seeing that, I was like, oh, she's FOS. She did that. So I think FOS put me in a position to do lots of other soft skill things. Like I remember going to like an etiquette dinner that Leslie, Dr. Pendleton, hosted. And I was like, okay, so next time I had some kind of event, like I knew what to do more or less. I think there were also kind of like dress for success sort of things, like I got to mess up early on. That way, when it really came time to do the things, I could do it correctly, because I didn't really have a background in that. So no, I'm not sure if they help people apply for law school, but there's been is she FOS? There's been a few other UF people who have gone to Yale with me at law school. And so there's like one every other year or something. So we're really not super represented as like a state school, and it's like Florida.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of other like Yale undergrads and like Harvard undergrad kind of people. But we're out here and we do the things sometimes. I think Manny might have been an FOS scholar, and he was 1 year younger than me.
Yeah. So you said you took like that 3-year gap. Why did you decide to not pursue law like directly after undergrad?
I mean, looking back, I didn't recognize it as one of the reasons at the time, but I do think there was some sense of like burnout because of everything that had happened. I mean, I really did a lot in high school, like way, you know how all the UF people are, like way too much. Had a job, was president of this and that and the other, took like 5 APs a year. And then life happened, and then like college, and it was all a lot. So that was part of it that I recognize now that and I always tell people when I do a lot of pre-law advising, I always tell people, like, take time off, because you only get better with experience. You only get better. There's no way your application gets worse unless you like go and like get arrested or something. Then maybe just go straight through while you're, like clean record. Although it happens, people have records, it's fine. But my thinking at the time was, it's more like something told me to sort of thing, because the plan wasn't even 3 years. It was like, all right, if anything, it's 2 years and that's it. And then another year happened. But basically I won a free LSAT course, because if you're the most active member of PLHS, you get a free course. So I was like going to everything trying to get my free course. My whole life was like a hustle. So I did that, and it was like a live online where like it was like me and you, like someone's talking to you, but like it's not recorded. And I just like didn't want to be there. Like I was not taking advantage of like this, I don't know, $2,000 course And I was like, what is going on? Because like, this is definitely what you want to do. Is it like, right? And
Yeah.
I wanted to give myself the chance to really explore that, even though like I knew it was. If you know something is what you want to do and you're going to do it anyway, then like it doesn't hurt you to take time to like explore other things. And so I was like, all right, let me start looking for some like fellowships. Like, what would I do? I was like, I'll do anything but teach for America because they're calling a lot. Yeah, so I was like, I'll do anything but Teach for America. Like, I hate Teach for America. You know, they're super present in UF. And then I got one of those emails that's like, meet with somebody for a coffee. And I was like, it's a free coffee, so I'll go. And I spoke to this one person who I actually really did appreciate her take on Teach for America and like what it can be. And I was like, okay, I'll apply. And I applied and I ended up getting it. And then I was like, okay, well, like if I do this, I'm going to do it on my terms. So I only wanted to do like bilingual education. So I moved to Colorado and did Teach for America for 2 years, and telling my mom like, hey, I'm not going to go to law school was like rough. At this point, me and my mom were like reunited. Like we live in the same city now, like when I'm not in Gainesville. And my dad's like out of the picture. So everyone's safe, everyone's good. And you know, in other countries, there is no undergrad and then grad school. You just like, you go to be a doctor. So you just do the things like you don't need to take, what were these funny classes like Man's Food and Age of Dinosaurs? These are classes they used to have at UF. I don't know if they still do.
No, we still do.
That was definitely my science credit because I was like, I'm not doing physics.
It's going to be my science credit next semester.
It's great. Don't leave it to the last minute. That's what I did. It was rough. But, you know, telling her that was like a big shock because already she didn't understand. She thought I was in law school this whole time, especially because I would do like law-y things. And then I was like, nah, I'm not going. Like it's a 7-year thing. And I'm going to put 2 more years in the process, making it a 9-year process. It ended up being a 10-year process. But even when I was in Denver getting ready, like I took the LSAT, I kind of had a personal statement in mind. There was still something really strong in me that was like, don't go yet. And I was like, thing, whatever this is not the plan. Like it's time, you know, I have to think about like, when do I want to settle down and like have kids? Where am I going to live? Turns out I think it was perfectly placed because it ended up being that I started law school at the beginning of the Trump administration and graduated at the end. And I think that was like very specific because I applied in 2016. So before I knew what was going to happen, I submitted right after, but I was prepping it. I ended up moving to North Carolina and doing a fellowship with a nonprofit where I was doing like socio-economic issues in the South, specifically in kind of like policy research. And so this is what led me to like want to do, I always knew I wanted to do public interest, but public interest is like not private law. And so I was like, okay, but what do I want to do? And those experiences like linked together helped me see that like the issues that I would see like my students face, I knew that I couldn't change anything for them as much as I wanted to. I could like put band-aids on things. And, you know, one of my students' dad got deported and I wrote a letter of support to the judge and I like tried to be there for him, but I couldn't change the fact that his dad was gone. There was nothing I could do about it. And when I did my fellowship and I started learning more about like impact litigation and policy, and I was like, oh, I can change like policies. Okay, like this gives me a little bit more hope. So that helped me see that like I want to do it. My model is called community lawyering. I want to do community lawyering where like I'm a lawyer, but I'm a resource. I'm not like, let me save you. I know everything. It's like I'm a resource for community members and organizations. So I'm really glad I did it, the time off, and which is why I always advise people. And it wasn't strategic. I think now people do it a lot more strategically. They're like, I'm going to get this fellowship and this internship, and then I'm going to be ba, ba, ba. I just had this really strong feeling that I should do that with which is what most things have been. Like, of course I can be strategic and think these through the more I know, but oftentimes it was just kind of a gut feeling that now I can articulate as to like what I was actually thinking.
Yeah. So are there, sorry, like that story like blew me away. Like that sounds, it just sounds so amazing. So like, you know, being a first generation student and especially, you know, the entire Trump administration, like how did that influence your, you know, law career?
Yeah, I mean, it was really funny. So I used to work in admissions at my law school. And the class after me was very fiery, very radical, because these were the people who like decided to apply because Trump was in office. Not all of them, but many of them. I mean, it was really hard. I remember my first year constitutional law class learning about DACA because it's a constitutional issue. And like that same day it being announced that it was being rescinded, and sitting next to my friend who was a DACA recipient.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an abstract thing. There were all these things and I'm sure many people feel that way about things in life, because like once you're in law school, you understand that it's like, you actually understand what's happening. You're like, oh, usually you just see it like on NPR and you're like, okay, but now I actually know what like law you're talking about, and I actually know why it's difficult to get that passed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was difficult. It was, and I don't even have all of the identities that were attacked during the Trump administration. Like, I'm a citizen of the United States. No one's kicking me out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm not Muslim. No one's banning me. But these things were affecting the people around me, were affecting me in different ways, right? Like as a woman, as a person of color, like all these things, the hateful rhetoric around people who are Latinx, like all that is affecting you, and it's just bringing you down, making you sad, making you angry.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I was surrounded by an incredible amount of powerful people, because I don't think I mentioned this in my thing, but I went to Yale Law School,
Yeah.
which is the number one law school in the country, right? So like, who are the kind of people who go here? Well, Mike Pence's daughter was my classmate.
Really?
And that's normal. Like some of my other friends are like family friends of Merrick Garland, I'm like summer with him. So it was like a really weird, like if I felt first gen in college, where at least some people were kind of like me. There were some people from Miami, whatever. Most people were from Florida. Here it was like a whole other level, whole new ball game of people who like Olympic athletes, like Rhodes scholars, like everything you can imagine. So it was weird to feel so affected, and to know that most of my classmates were not affected.
Yeah.
That if student debt doesn't get canceled, they're good actually, because their parents paid sticker. And sticker at YLS is like, I don't even know, probably like 100,000 a year sort of thing. Like probably total UF, but like in 1 year, 1 semester, very expensive, just because it's private. Most law schools were kind of the same price, more or less. So it was like a really weird, disconnected time to feel affected, and to also know that I was largely privileged by being in this bubble, and like I was going to be okay. But wanting to do more of everything. Like I was in the refugee assistant clinic. Like I did a lot of immigration stuff. I did education stuff, children's stuff, criminal stuff. Just seeing so many, like it was like whack-a-mole, and there was tons of moles coming out. So I think whereas normally people might be like, oh, I'm interested in like this thing and I'll explore that, I was just trying to like put out fires and also take care of myself at the same time, because every day, every tweet, everything was just too much.
No, absolutely. It's like an attack on your livelihood for a lot of these people.
Yeah.
So are you like, were there, maybe like Dr. Pendleton included, like, were there influential people that, kind of affected your journey at UF? And like, I believe you are a criminology major, correct?
Yeah, criminology and psychology.
Okay, yeah. So like, kind of tell me like, for one, why you chose those majors, and also, like, and this is very distant, but why are there like any influential people from MFOS or even UF that you're still in contact with?
Yeah. So originally I was poli-sci, because like that was the thing to do if you were pre-law. And I was like, oh, I hate this. Like I absolutely don't want to talk about this. I hate it. Because I thought it would be about like current politics, which I also don't love, but it is what it is. Like my job is very political and I have to like be in tune. But it was like Max Weber. And I was like, this is so boring to me. Like I don't want to be here.
Understand.
I don't want to be here. And I didn't want to be like basic and do like criminology, but I was like, this is what I like. Back when I had a much more like prosecutorial state of mind, which now I'm like an abolitionist. So it's like completely different. But back then you grow up watching Law and Order SVU, and to you, like cops are heroes. Like, this is great. This is how I'm going to be like a leader or whatever. Got over that. I think junior year, got over that after Trayvon Martin. I was like, this isn't right. And psychology was great too. I really liked it. I was like, I have time. I think I had gotten too many credits from like AP, and I was like, I have time to fit in like more. So let me just do that. And it was really fun. And so that's that. And as far as influential people who I'm still in contact with, but like, it's been a while now, like 8 years or so. No, I'm bad at math. 7 years, like 7 or so years. So, contact is relative, but people who I'm like Facebook friends with, and every once in a while we'll like send an email like every year or so. People at Student Legal Services. So Alicia Tabag, who's the assistant director, she's the one who got me a job at Student Legal Services. I used to be a volunteer, and then she, got me a job. So that was a way for me to, even though I had FOS, I kind of don't feel comfortable not having a job, at least one, just for that extra security, or like, okay, well, what if I want to buy a shirt at Forever 21 or whatever back in the days. So, that was nice. And I think she's involved with FOS. So she kind of like knew my story a little bit. And then everyone who worked in the front desk, Marty Lewis, I'm still Facebook friends with her. My mom talks to her sometimes. Shauna. So I keep in touch with those people. And then professor wise, Professor Stafford is my absolute favorite professor. Have you taken him yet?
I want to take him next semester for civil liberties.
Oh yeah.
I know it's early in the morning, but I'm like, I really want to.
It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it. And civil liberties is a good one to take first.
Yeah.
It's the toughest, I think. But yeah, he was great. I took all 3 of his classes, and he's the faculty advisor for Pre-Legal Honor Society. So when I was president, I also, would meet with him and talk. He ended up writing my letters for law school. And we've kept in touch, like when I got into Yale, but had decided that I was going to go to NYU. Like I talked to him on the phone, and I was like, what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. And he helped me with that. And we text, I got him suspenders, which he's famous for wearing, and he wears them every first day of school. So, you can say we're like as close as you can be with like an older professor man, like as close as you could be. That's appropriate. And with Leslie, we've definitely kept in touch. It's always been interesting to go from literally being her student. Like, it's not just like the director of the program, like I was in her little class, to then like she was in Denver one day and I lived there, and like we went out to dinner. I think she kind of knows that she can reach out to me for anything, that I'm always very open to help FOS things. There's not like a barrier of like, I hope, that it doesn't feel like asking for a favor, but like that I'm very committed to like paying FOS back. And in the meantime, till I start making like money for real, because public interest does not pay that well, doing these kinds of things, like she knows that I'm always very down to do these things.
Yeah. So I know you've kind of talked about, paying back MFOS. Do you plan to like stay involved? Sorry, someone's at my front door. Do you plan to, stay involved? You're like, eventually once, you get paid a bit more, like contribute back to the program. Like, what are you thinking about doing?
I don't know when that happened. My partner seems to be pretty certain that that'll happen for me one day. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Because I chose this life, so I understand. Yeah. I mean, no, definitely. Even when I was like a teacher and like wasn't making that much, like I would always contribute. Like if I'm gonna contribute to UF, it's gonna be MFOS. Like that's the place I'm going to give my money, because that's the entity that I feel really gave me an opportunity. Like UF, like also, the more I've woken up, for lack of a better word, kept up with what's going on in the school, I'm like, I'm not sure you're pushing the things that like we should be believing in. Absolutely. But FOS does. Like I'm sure a huge percentage of the Black and brown students who end up going to UF is with the help of FOS.
Oh no, absolutely. Like there's no doubt about it. The program I'm part of, like the oral history program, we're interviewing all the MFOS students.
You have a great building. I remember that building is very nice.
Oh, nice. I haven't been on campus. I'm a first year. So,
oh my gosh, you're right. You're right.
So, I mean, like my mom's a professor, but she's like in the J school. So like I really, really haven't been on campus. But, we're making a timeline of everything and we're learning about UF's history. And it's like, oh wow, like this is
there's some rough things.
There's some rough things that really get pushed under the rug. And like this program is for us to be like, hey, like UF's doing a great job with like the MFOS program, but at the same time, UF has some pretty nasty stuff in their history, and like the buildings are immortalizing these people that
right, Mr. Right.
Oh my gosh, like homophobic, xenophobic, like when that wasn't like as coined of a term, like very, very racist people that like UF won't change because it's like it's our tradition, and it's like, well, let's look back on what tradition actually means. So that's kind of what the program I'm in right now is like, it's part, great, but we can do better.
Right.
Yeah. So, now that you're, an undergrad graduate and you've, graduated Yale Law School and you're now like a public defender, or no, you're not. You're in
You can say I'm a impact litigation attorney.
impact litigation. I like
I
wrote it
just
down.
started though, so it feels a little fake for me to be like, I'm this, but like that's what it says on my LinkedIn. So
No, exactly. If LinkedIn says it's official, what does being, a first generation, college student, or even, like first gen or like first, generation citizen mean to you?
yeah, it's one of those things where like if you ask the fish, like, what does water mean to you? They'd be like,
Exactly. It's just my
this is just it's just my life, like whatever. It's not until I feel other that like it has some kind of sentiment. Like I never really thought about like being Latinx or Dominican until I went to UF and I was like, oh, you literally don't know what a Dominican is when I say that. When I speak Spanish, you're shocked. You're like,
yeah.
what is happening here? And then, so I really found a lot of like community with like people who were like me in that way. I don't know. It just means to me that like I have an experience that not everybody else has. And I'm glad that people find value in it now. Like
Yeah.
I've never worked in a place where that actually wasn't super important. And that's on purpose because like those are the kind of communities that like I want to work with and work for. And so like I think it makes sense that like, hey, like I will never pretend to know your experience because we're different. But like here's like one that's like kind of maybe similar and helps me understand a little bit more than maybe someone who hasn't had that experience at all. So I don't know. It just means that like it's hard because I don't like playing into the whole and FOS does is like a little bit, right? Like kind
Yeah.
of like the American dream. Like if she can do it, you can do it. I'm like, well, I can do it because you gave me thousands of dollars in support.
No,
That's what
exactly.
it takes.
It
That's
does.
what it takes. If you do that, then we're good. By the way, send me my stimulus. Like that's what it takes.
Amen.
Where is my stimmy? Um, so and when people watch this in 3020, like the stimulus check is still not here. It's March, just so you know.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's what it takes. And so it's hard because I do feel like proud of myself when things like this happen. Normally I just like live my life. I'm like, all right, next step, whatever. But if I take time to like pause, like today I got invited to speak at a panel at Columbia Law School and I was like, does anyone else want to do this? Because I'm not sure if I can do. They're like, no, come. And it was great. And I was like, wow, like I'm the panelist last year. I was watching the panels. So I'm like proud of myself. At the same time, I know that there's so much work to do and I don't want to be the exception. I don't want to be like that one person who like made it. And my partner is very similar. Like he like immigrated from Jamaica, like went to NYU for law school, like did really well. And like our families kind of very much look up to us, but I'm like, all right, but what about my little cousins? Like who's next? Like I don't want to be the first and the last. I want there to be more of
Yeah.
these things. And like my kids, my future kids will not be able to get FOS. There won't be first gen.
Yeah.
And so what kind of opportunities are there for regular people,
Yeah, no. Like you said, like money makes the world go round, especially here and upper education. It's
Yeah, it's almost impossible. I can't imagine like I only have debt now from law school before I didn't have any.
yeah, no. So I'm thinking, I'm like going through, I wrote down like 15 questions and we've like kind of covered all of them. So do you think you could finish off with some advice that you would give to like your freshman year self?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same advice I have to give myself now, still every day, which is like, you belong here.
Me
Like,
too.
you're here, you got here, you belong here. Like, you have what it takes to get here, you have what it takes to succeed here. Like, take advantage of every single opportunity that you can. Like, don't count yourself out. Make them tell you no. Like,
Yeah.
don't tell yourself no, make them tell you no.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Um, I've done a couple of these interviews now, and you can definitely tell that people are like, I need to tell myself, like, I'm actually here and I did it because of my own strength and my own will. And like, I think everyone should remember that.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, that's all I really have for you, but thank you so much for meeting with me. Like, I'm like kind of starstruck, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, this is
And
amazing.
don't, if this helps, I'm like wearing socks, like I'm a new person.
No, but thank you so much for meeting with me and taking time out of your, obviously very busy day. Just talk to me about, your undergraduate experience.
No, thank you. And actually interested in going to law school later, like in life or now, like, because I think a lot of people play around with like, oh, maybe not. And it is like a serious decision because of the amount of debt that you'll have.
Absolutely.
Feel free to contact me. I'll give you my personal email address actually in the chat because I don't know how long that Yale one will last. I'm just using it for like all the free student things. So. Still hustling. But yeah, I talk to a lot of people about like law school stuff, and of course it changes with time. Like I find myself being less and less relevant every year when I like my intel is like outdated, but there are some things that will always be true about admissions. And so if and when that time comes, like, you know, just start planning like your undergrad stuff. Like you're already involved as a first year in this great program. So I think you have it together.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But you know, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you so much for meeting with me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.